Welcome to this very, very special effort, ladies and gentlemen. It's not often that we give way to debates and have conversations. But this one is a must-have. It's about this book, which is India, Bharat, Pakistan. The author is sitting right next to me. This is part 2 of his trilogy. And he is somebody who needs no introduction. So JSD, a good friend, Sai Deepak, good to have you with us. Namaste, namaskaram, how are you? India, Bharat, Pakistan, constitutional journey of a sandwiched civilization.
Right.
Now this sandwiched civilization is clearly Bharatam.
Right.
Now let's come to book 2.
Right.
The premise of this book.
Right.
See, book 1 set it up. As you understood, we understood civilization, coloniality, and of course our constitution.
Correct.
Am I right or wrong in saying that it all started in trying to understand where is the genesis of our constitution? That's where your journey started?
Correct.
You took a detour. Rather than moving ahead, you've actually gone back in time.
Right.
So let's start from there. Why?
So, as you rightly said, the entire trigger for this particular exercise, which I don't think is partly academic, it's academic come civilizational and very, very personal in terms of the learning that I have gone through. So, this was meant to be a trilogy, with the first part covering the period from 1492 to 1919, the second from 1920 to 1951, and the third from the first general elections to 1977. That is almost until the end of the emergency period. So once I was done with the first book, and I started the second book around Vijayadashami of October 2021, I struggled to move beyond 1800 words from October to January. Now, this was not because of paucity of literature or material with me. I had enough material to last me for another 5 or 6 books. But somehow the flow wasn't right. And I felt that I was being mechanical in my conversation after the first book, which is to say, it's done until 1919, let's take it forward from there. Some crucial element was missing. I would call it creative epiphany, but since I'm a believer, I would call it the hand of providence. Which is one day, I think, around December, January, when I was getting ready for court in the morning. Suddenly, I felt that I need to go back. Because you see, what I'm covering so far, at least as part of the first book, was the European Christian angle. But the partition of Bharat has more than one player to be attributed to. So, which is the other hand, and what is the genesis of the other hand, I needed to look at.
Right.
Now, therefore, you're looking at the proponents of the two-nation theory. Now, you see, there is enough literature on Sai Deepak. Correct. There is enough literature on Jinnah.
Yeah.
Some of the finest books that I've read so far is, of course, Dr. Ambedkar's Pakistan and the Partition of India.
Yeah.
It was written around 1946. But a much more, let's say, researched book would be Venkat Dhulipala's Creating a New Medina.
Yeah.
And this focuses on the period from 1937 onwards. So you see, the most well-known characters and faces come to the fore, which is Jinnah and others. But I genuinely believe that the answer did not lay either in Jinnah or Sai Deepak, because I felt that there was a thought continuum, which is to say, if they were taking a thought forward, did they create it, or were they merely, let's say, torchbearers of a pre-existing thought?
So where did the genesis
come
from?
Yeah. And therefore, I went further and further and further, and this took me to Shah Waliullah Dehlavi. And therefore, the period of 1740, which is after the decline of the Mughal Empire began, after they lost miserably to the Marathas, and after the death of Aurangzeb. For all practical purposes, you can treat Dakhan or Deccan as the graveyard of Aurangzeb, for all practical purposes. No wonder he is buried there.
Yeah.
Okay. So, and then the brilliant intellectuals that the Muslim community threw up, both in the Middle East or in Arabia, and in this part of, let's say, the world, which is the Indian subcontinent, the Bharatiya subcontinent, there was something simultaneous about it. And it was not simply coincidence, because both the individuals, Abdul Wahab and Shah Waliullah Dehlavi, were contemporary students of Hadith in Hijaz.
Wow.
This is exactly what I've shown.
You have.
So therefore, they were taking forward a certain thought process that they themselves had received. And turns out that this thought process went back to the 9th century.
Hanbali.
Yes, Hanbali movement, Ibn Taymiyyah. From there it goes on. And therefore it has multiple schools of thought, multiple diversities, but then the broad nuances go back to the basics, which is follow Islam in the manner it was followed by the early converts to Islam. Now then you look at the exposition of the two-nation theory in the pre-colonial, pre-European idiom and language, by Shah Waliullah Dehlavi very clearly says this is the case. He makes out a case for the existence of a Khilafat or a Caliphate. Khilafat, we typically assume that no, it's a resistance. No, it's not. Khilafat means Caliphate.
Khalifa. Having a Khalifa.
Exactly.
So this entire Khilafat movement in the 1920s was also about Khalifa in Turkey or try and protect the Ottoman Empire.
Exactly. Because they were effectively saying that the purpose of their faith is to break the existing social order inside out. Because according to them, as you see on banners everywhere in these days, Islam is the solution. And therefore, the way to achieve it, so if that is the end, the means to that end is jihad.
Okay.
And it needed to be given a particular political structure. That political structure is the creation of the caliphate. So that there is one Chhatrapati from their end, which is to say one umbrella, a single unified command under which different leaders and different Muslim rulers can operate. That process needs to be understood, and the theology, political theology needs to be understood if you want to make sense of Khilafat movement, if you want to make sense of two-nation theory. You cannot understand the partition of Bharat without Khilafat. You cannot understand Khilafat without understanding Shah Waliullah Dehlavi. Therefore, I had to take the detour. And I said, okay, let's now try and merge the first book's timeline and the second book's timeline. So this